Is there an unseen realm behind the curtain of what we can see with our eyes? Is there a supernatural reality behind the one we know? I attempt to explain the unexplainable and get to know the unknown beyond the veil of this dimension from a Christian perspective. I'm Jerry, your host for Thai Girl for God Radio. Dr. Kent Hovind has been the center of much attention in Christian circles as well as in global news. His viewpoints have garnered much controversy over the years among Christian believers as well as evolutionists because of his theory of a much younger Earth than what is typically taught in schools, as well as how dinosaurs roamed the Earth with man. Even amidst the controversy, he remains steadfast and firm in his convictions. Now, Thai Girl for God Radio presents, through the Paratruth Radio Network, The Road Less Traveled with Dr. Kent Hovind. Thank you for listening to the Thai Girl for God Radio show. I've got an awesome special guest that I'm very honored and privileged to have on my show, and that would be Dr. Kent Hovind. If you don't know who Dr. Kent Hovind is, he is a creation scientist, and he was a high school science teacher for several years, and he's been touring the country for several years as well to talk about creation science from a biblical perspective. And thank you so much, Dr. Hovind, for guest speaking on my show tonight.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. All right, Dr. Hovind, I'll just dive right in to the questions. Dr. Hovind, what would you say to Christians who still believe in evolution?
Well, they need to define what they mean by that word evolution. Certainly, this is not what the Bible teaches. I divide the word evolution up into 6 categories or stages. First, you have what's called cosmic evolution, the origin of time, space, matter by the Big Bang. Well, that's just dumb, and it's certainly not scriptural. Then you have to have chemical evolution, where the hydrogen produces all the other elements. Like gold comes from hydrogen. That's what they believe. Then you have to have stellar evolution, where the stars evolve out of dust. Nobody's ever seen that happen. That's pure imagination. It's actually a religion. Then you'd have to have organic evolution, where life gets started from non-living material. No one's ever seen that happen, other than God did it, which is what the Bible says. Then you'd have to have macro evolution, is changing from one kind of animal to another. And no one's ever seen that happen. You know, dogs produce dogs. Cows produce cows. There simply are no exceptions. Lastly, you have what's called microevolution, variations within the same kind. Oh, now that one happens. I'll go along with that. But that's as far as it goes. So, microevolution, if a Christian claims to believe in evolution, I ask him right away, what do you mean by the word evolution? You mean they certainly can't believe all 6 of those and believe the Bible is true. That would be crazy to claim they believe the Bible.
Right.
And because that's not what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches God created out of the dust of the ground in 6 days, did everything. I'd say, why would a person claim to be a Christian and believe that?
Right, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for answering that. Dr. Hovind, how many years did you teach high school science?
I taught high school science and math for 15 years before I moved to Pensacola. And then, so 27 years ago, in 89, I began the ministry of creation science evangelism.
Fantastic. That's great. And how many years did you travel the country speaking about creation science?
Well, I'm still doing it. Started, like I said, January 89, I moved here, and shortly after that began doing some speaking on creation, and the ministry grew. And by 90, I was full-time doing this stuff on defending the Bible as being scientifically accurate.
Okay, fantastic. Great, great. And what is your favorite topic to talk about?
Well, just the accuracy of the Bible. God's Word is just precisely correct as it's written. So I love defending the Bible as being scientifically accurate, which makes some people really angry, because if that book is accurate, then they're going to have to read it and do what it says. but they don't want to change their life to match what God's Word says. So the real problem is a lifestyle problem. They don't want to admit that God is God of the universe, and He might have some rules that govern their life. So there's the problem.
And I heard that one of your favorite topics are dinosaurs/dragons. Can you tell us about that?
Well, yes, dinosaurs, one of my favorite topics to discuss. Our website is drdino.com, D-R-D-I-N-O. My phone number is 855-BIG-DINO. So we like that. I was very confused as a child about dinosaurs. I was taught, like everybody else, that dinosaurs lived millions and millions of years ago. And then as I began reading the Bible, adding up the dates, the Bible teaches the world's only 6,000 years old. Adam was 130 when Seth was born, and the dates are all given in Genesis 5 and Genesis 11. You just add them up. So I was very confused. And so now that I have a biblical answer, it just makes so much more sense. God made it all in 6 days, like He said. Dinosaurs are just big lizards that lived with Adam and Eve. People stop growing. When you're 16 or 18, you're going to quit growing, at least vertically. Some go horizontally after that. But reptiles never stop. Reptiles never stop growing. They grow all their lives. So if before the flood came, the Bible says the people lived to be 900. Well, if a reptile could live to be 900, he'd get 70 feet long. They just don't stop growing. And so the dinosaurs were just big lizards that lived with Adam and Eve. They did not live millions of years ago. So I think Satan has been using God's own creatures to teach kids a lie and to draw people into doubting the Bible from God's creatures. And it's time we put a stop to that.
Absolutely. I agree. I happen to love talking about dinosaurs, and I had studied a bit about how there's so many relics and artwork and history and hieroglyphs and
yes.
all kinds of evidence for dinosaurs to coexist with man. I know that sounds ridiculous to a lot of people because we have been pre-programmed or conditioned all our life. That is, people who've been raised in secular schools and colleges, which is most people in America and around the world. We've been preconditioned to believe that dinosaurs exist billions upon billions of years ago, way before man ever existed. And like you said, I do believe that is a tool of the enemy to dislodge the timeline of the Bible, therefore the truth of the Bible, and replace it with the lies of this false timeline that never existed, because there's so much archaeological and scientific evidence, such as the young bones and the Chinese, using the dinosaur bones for soups and things like that. Can you tell us about the young dinosaur bones and all that entails, the implications thereof?
Well, I have a 2-hour seminar on that one called Dinosaurs in the Bible. It's my DVD number 3, which people can get from drdino.com. But yes, there is overwhelming evidence, what's called historical evidence, like you mentioned, the cave art and writing on other stones that are like the Ica stones in Peru, the fabrics that have been found, the carvings, the numerous mentions of dragons, which are almost certainly dinosaurs, same animal, different name. I think from a Christian perspective, it's very simple. Dinosaurs were big lizards with Adam and Eve. Noah took them on the ark, probably babies. Just be sure to get a pink one and a blue one. And after the flood, people killed most of them, or climate change killed them. So most of them are gone. A few may still be alive. There have been thousands of sightings, like Loch Ness Monster kind of stuff, in the last 50 years. I mean, thousands of sightings. Pterodactyls, and mostly swamps and real remote areas of the earth where there seem to be some still around. So they not only did they live with man, they might still live with man.
I think so. Do you think a lot of the what people would call, quote, sea monsters probably outlived the land dinosaurs because of the global flood? Well,
yes, it'd be much harder to exterminate all the creatures in the ocean than it would be on land. It's just, the bigger place to hide,
Right.
So, I think it's, from just a logical perspective, if there are some in the ocean, they may still be undiscovered, because it's just, see, today, during the age of sailing ships, sailboats are pretty quiet going through the water compared to the big steel ships today with metal, with the diesel engines on board. And sound travels great underwater. they can hear you coming 100 miles away, and they've just learned to avoid the shipping lanes, I think, is all that's happened.
I definitely think what people think are legends and lore, the mythology of different land dragons and different dragons that fly and walk and that are seen in the oceans and seas and what have you. I think that there's a lot of credibility and merit to that they're not just, like tall tales or lore, just to talk about, to your grandkids or the campfire. But I do definitely think that it lends credence, to the biblical timeline and everything. Do you think the Leviathan is a dinosaur?
Yeah, I have a whole videotape called Leviathan, the fire-breathing dragon of Job 41. In the book of Job, in the Bible, just before Psalms, chapter 41 has a whole chapter dedicated to Leviathan, which, when you read the description, it's fire-breathing. How many legends are there about fire-breathing dragons down through history? Hundreds of them. So, yes, I think there was something. And in that video, I give the biological way how that can happen, how an animal could breathe fire. I give some of the historical accounts of fire-breathing dragons. But, yes, certainly the Bible teaches there was one.
Awesome. Great. I think so, too. All right. And I actually just was listening to one of your discussions. I think that your son had put out there on YouTube, and I thought it was very interesting. I'm about halfway through it. And it talked about how evolution promotes lawlessness and immorality. Could you go into some detail about that?
Yes, ma'am. I've asked atheists all over the world a simple question. I say, if evolution is true, how do you tell right from wrong? On any topic. Is abortion right or wrong? Is murder right or wrong? Is premarital sex right or wrong? Is sex with your dog right or wrong? Is anything right or wrong? And if it is, how do you determine this? Who determines what's right and wrong? See, the Christian has a standard called "Thus saith the Lord."
Right.
The evolutionist is stuck with, well, we don't have a standard. They don't know what's right and wrong. I would still ask them today, how do you tell right from wrong? On any topic, if evolution is true, where's the standard? See, if evolution is true, then Hitler was right, because he thought the strongest should survive, and the Germans were the strongest, so let's go kill everybody else. That's the logical conclusion to Hitler.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes.
So, yeah, I think it's a very, very important topic.
And I thought it was interesting what you were talking about with regards to how evolution promotes not only immorality and lawlessness, but also it promotes racism and genocide. Can you go into detail about that?
Well, it goes back to, first of all, there's only one race. It's called the human race.
Right.
I get sick of these people talking about black people and white people. I've never met a black man. I've met dark brown ones.
Right.
I've never met a white man either. I'm not white. I'm light brown.
Right.
So there's really all shades of brown and skin color. But yeah, I think the racism idea certainly is silly. There's no race. There's only one race, the human race. But if in light of evolution, they would say, one type of human has evolved above the rest, and it's really best if the rest of them get eliminated. Mm-hmm. Isn't that what every farmer does? Cull the herd, get rid of the weaker ones to make a stronger herd. Right. They'll use all kinds of examples, exactly what Hitler did, and Stalin, and multitude of others, Pol Pot. Well, you're from Thailand. Look what happened in Cambodia with the Pol Pot. Same thing. Right. He was a strong believer in evolution.
Right. Oh gosh, yes. And I know that that's one of the people that you cited as being an evolutionist. Hitler, Pol Pot, the
Imperial Japanese Army
during World War II, and how cruel they were to Americans because they believed they were a superior race, because
the Imperial Japanese Army were staunch evolutionists. They perceived that they were more evolved than the other races, namely the Caucasian soldiers from America.
They felt that they had less hair than the rest of the other ethnicities or in their minds races, and so that's why they justified just torturing the American soldiers during World War II. And I thought that was interesting that you cited that. Can you think of some other examples of people using evolution as a basis for genocide or torture?
Well, it's been this way under most communist dictatorships. There have been many around the world that have done this very, very thing. Not only Cambodia, but Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, once you believe in evolution, that there really is no God in evolution theory. Man makes the decisions. There's only two choices: either there is a God or there isn't. Nobody's thought of a third choice. So if there's a God, then he makes the rules, not man.
I forget there was in that movie God's Not Dead. I forget the young man who was in college who had to defend his standpoint that there is a God. He did bring up a very good point by I forget a philosopher. I forget who it was who stated, if there is no God, then everything is permissible. Every lawless deed, every sin, etc. Do you think that's true?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I go back to the question I ask atheists all the time. If evolution is true, how do you tell right from wrong on any topic? They simply can't answer. I've never had one answer yet.
Wow, so that is definitely a confounding question to ask atheists. Absolutely, I agree. And Dr. Hovind, do you believe in a literal 7-day creation according to the Bible, and why?
Well, certainly the Bible teaches that. In 6 days, God made heaven and earth, and then he rested the seventh day. And Jesus said in Matthew 19:4 and in Mark 10:6 that the creation of Adam was the beginning. Romans 5 and 1 Corinthians 15 both tell us that nothing died until Adam sinned. Man brought death into the world, whereas with evolution theory, death brought man into the world. Exactly the opposite. So yes, I do believe 6-day creation. That is what the Bible teaches. Plus, that's the only way it works. On day 3, God made the plants, the trees, the grass. On day 4, he made the sun. Well, those days can't be millions of years, or the plants are going to die waiting for the sun to come up.
Right.
And he made the insects and birds that pollinate the plants on day 5. It has to be normal 6-day creation. There's just no other way this is going to work. So people are welcome to believe whatever they want, but the Bible clearly teaches 6-day creation and 1 day of rest, or 7 days total. And scientifically, there are so many millions of examples of what are called symbiotic relationships, where certain animals require certain specific plants to live, or certain plants require certain animals to pollinate them. There are millions of examples of, I think it defies any explanation other than creation. A tire is designed to fit on a rim. You can't say each one evolved separately and then happen to fit together. A tire and a rim is a symbiotic relationship where they both need each other. And so it's common sense to say, okay, there's so many millions of symbiotic relationships. They must have been designed for each other.
Okay, and let's see. I think this kind of lends into what you were just saying. How old do you believe the Earth is, and why?
The Bible dates clearly add up to about 4,000 BC for the creation. So that would be about 6,000 years total, counting it's 2,000 years since Christ. So I don't give an exact date, but I think the Earth is about 6,000 years old.
Because of the biblical account. And a friend of mine asked, can we biblically prove the age of the Earth? Which I think you've answered that already.
Well, yeah, I don't know if we can get real exact, but certainly the Bible says nothing died till Adam sinned. Adam was the first man. Jesus said the creation of Adam was the beginning, Mark 10:6 and Matthew 19:4. Yeah, you just add up the dates. Adam was 130 when Seth was born, and Seth was 105 when his son was born. And just look through Genesis 5 and Genesis 11 and add them up. By the time you get to Joseph, where the chronology really ends as far as giving us numbers, we've got secular history because we know Joseph was the vice pharaoh of Egypt. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think people have established the dates of that pretty clearly. So yeah, you can go back and say, look, it's about 4,000 BC for the creation. That's what it adds up to. Now, scientifically, there are also many ways to limit the age of the Earth to less than billions of years. And I covered that on my DVD number 1, which people can watch right on drdino.com.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. I've been talking to Dr. Kent Hovind. He's a creation scientist, and he definitely knows his stuff. And we'll be right back. Now it's time for Jerry's Food for Thought. These are fun facts from Reddit.com. High school students perform better on tests if they are in a classroom with a view of a green landscape. Giving up alcohol for just 1 month can improve liver function, decrease blood pressure, and reduce the risk of liver disease and diabetes. Farmers in India use Coca-Cola and Pepsi as cheap pesticides, according to the BBC. One hookah tobacco smoking session delivers 25 times the tar of a single cigarette. Often referred to as the love molecule, oxytocin is typically associated with helping couples establish a greater sense of intimacy and attachment. Hoverboards are illegal in New York City since 2015. And a koala's gestation period lasts only 33 to 35 days. Wow!
This was Jerry's Food for Thought.
Okay, now we're back from our quick break, and I've got Dr. Kent Hovind on the line. All right, Dr. Hovind, let's just go ahead and continue. Okay, and there's a lot of flat earthers out there, and they're usually in Christian conspiracy forums and such, and they believe in a flat earth. They're flat earthers. And so my friend, he asked a sincere question, not knowing. He asked, is the earth a globe or is it flat?
The earth is clearly a globe. It's about 25,000 miles around, a little less than 8,000 miles in diameter. It spins on its axis once every 24 hours, and it goes around the sun. This whole idea of geocentric or heliocentric or flat earth, the whole concept is boggling to me. I think it's a resurrection of a teaching that the Catholic Church taught centuries ago, and they were proven wrong, and they feel kind of bad about it, so they're trying to justify what they used to teach. And I just have a suspicion that some Catholics someplace are behind resurrecting this whole argument about the flat earth. It's just, parts of it is flat. Texas is kind of flat, and part of it, and Kansas is pretty flat, but no, the earth is round.
What do you think of those scriptures that people cite to, I guess, claim that the earth is flat, the four corners of the globe and things like that?
Well, that would make it not a pyramid, not flat. If it's got four corners, it wouldn't be flat.
Right.
They talk about the earth being a circle. Well, there's no such thing as a circle. A circle is a pure imaginary mathematical construct, and I taught geometry for 15 years. Circles do not exist other than in imagination, because as soon as you give it any depth at all, I mean, if it's round but a 10,000th of an inch high, it's now a cylinder. It's not a circle anymore. So a real circle doesn't even exist. Yeah, the earth is a sphere. It's a ball. I mean, it's visible from space to be that way. It is intuitive that it has to be. All the other planets we see are, and the shadow that we cast on the moon is clearly circular. When the moon goes in the right spot, we cast it. So there's just overwhelming empirical scientific evidence that points to the earth being a ball and spinning, and it's not a problem biblically. I don't know of any verses that can't be taken and explained. The Bible says God gathers us under his wing. Does that mean he's a chicken? No. I mean, that's just a metaphor. It's a figure of speech.
Right. Absolutely.
So it's not a problem. Okay?
Right. Absolutely. All right. And Dr. Hovind, some people are curious. Why were you imprisoned?
Well, in '99, we began building, buying up the neighborhood around here and building up Dinosaur Adventureland, a museum, science center, etc., to teach the Bible using science to kids. Dinosaur Adventureland, really, really fun place. We were dealing in cash with all the stuff we were doing, and so my wife would go down, because we have a lot of college students work for us. So we'd give them the keys to the truck and $3,000 and say, go buy shingles for this house and, go buy plywood, etc. And so we deal with a lot of cash as we're remodeling these old houses we bought for our staff to live in and building up our Dinosaur Adventureland. Every 2 weeks, she would go down to the bank and get $9,500. The pastor said, try to keep it under $10,000 or they might think you're a drug dealer. Well, I've never taken drugs in my life, and I've never even tasted alcohol. So I'm 63. I've never tasted alcohol. So I had NyQuil a couple times, to be for full disclosure here. But anyway, so every 2 weeks she'd go down and get $9,500. In 2002, I called everybody in and said, hold on a minute, this is crazy. I don't want her carrying this cash, and I don't want to keep that much on hand around here, so we're going to get some credit cards. And so we did. And so everything's fine. And we stopped the cash transactions after about 3 years and went to credit cards. 2006, the IRS came storming into my house with a SWAT team and arrested my wife and I for structuring. I said, I've never heard of that. What is it? They said, 5 years ago, you took your money out of the bank in amounts less than $10,000. Yeah? They said that's against the law to take your money out of the bank in amounts less than $10,000 because you're trying to evade the reporting requirement for you to take out over 10. That's like giving somebody a ticket for going 67 in a 70-mile-an-hour zone because you're avoiding the ticket.
Right.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's so stupid.
Wow.
If it hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't believe it. But there's a website called freekenthovind.com, Kent, my first name, and then Hovind, Hovind, freekenthovind.com. Has a whole bunch of stuff about the case and how bizarre it is and how the government broke over 45 laws to put me in prison. And then they moved me 32 times while I was in prison.
Oh my gosh.
Moved me all over the country. Yes. They call it diesel therapy. We'll shut this guy up.
Wow.
So I said, Lord, I'm your child. I'll do what you tell me to do. And I can't control where they send me, but I led 800 men to the Lord while I was in prison and wrote 37 books and earned 2 more doctor's degrees. And I tried to use my time wisely.
That's great. That is definitely, in my mind, a case of what the enemy intending for evil, God intending for good. And I remember in a previous interview with you and another Christian radio show host that I think you had talked about the man or the attorney that had indicted or prosecuted you, and then he himself had many skeletons in the closet, and I think he wound up getting killed himself. Could you go into some detail about that?
Well, yes. Shortly after they put me in prison, they said, now, not only do you go to prison for 10 years for structuring, all the money that you structured belongs to the government, they said. And so I now owed them $400,000 in their mind. And so the U.S. attorney went down and seized the church bank account and then flew to Detroit a few weeks later to have sex with a 5-year-old, got off the plane with Vaseline and a doll, and they arrested him, and he hung himself in jail. John David Roy Atchison, that's the guy that seized our church ministry money and helped put me in jail.
Oh my gosh. He died in infamy, basically. I think, in my own personal opinion, I think the Lord had basically compensated him for falsely accusing you. And I just remember that scripture, if you do something evil against, God's children, that it would be better if, a millstone were around that person's neck and flung into the sea. Although that's not literally what happened, but, he came against you and he falsely imprisoned you and made your life miserable. And yet, he had so many skeletons in the closet, it wasn't funny, especially with regards to, or, what he was found with, basically, being a child rapist, and so that's really sad for the guy that probably didn't know the Lord before he passed, but I hope he did. He probably didn't, though. And what was his name again?
John David Roy Atchison.
John David Roy Atchison.
Atchison. He hung himself on my wife and I's, on the anniversary of my wife and I's first date, October 5th. Was our first date, and that was 2007 when he hung himself.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, I don't glory in it at all, but
it is
so bizarre. Yeah, and the other attorney, Michelle Heldemeyer, her husband was involved in a child pornography ring, and so they moved him out of there to prevent him from getting prosecuted for child pornography. They're the ones that put me in jail.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, that's definitely, I think, an example of somebody who had demonic issues and were definitely used by the enemy to accuse you falsely when they had, huge sins of their own. That sometimes people will, shine the magnifying glass on somebody else's perceived sin to disguise and hide their own sin. I think that's probably what happened in this case from him to you. Goodness gracious. All right. And so the next question is for my friend Jim McKinney. He asked, did God create the Big Bang to create the universe?
Well, there was no Big Bang, so God didn't create it because it never happened. The Big Bang is a big dud for multiple reasons. It's just a theory, and it explains nothing. It does not explain where time came from, where space came from, where matter came from, where energy came from. It's a real silly theory, I think. Dumb might be a better word. The Big Bang theory isn't true, so why would God create it? It didn't happen.
Right. I think so too. And then this is another question that is similar from another person. If the Big Bang Theory really happened, how could so many species such as animal, plant, sea life, etc. be so perfect and so unique in their colors and their attributes and reproduction come from that? I think you pretty much answered it, but if you wanted to go into detail with that, that's fine.
Yeah, I think the perfection of the universe and of the biosphere and is just mind-boggling. That so many plants or animals just, I think, defy any explanation other than a really, really smart God. I tell people, if you're walking through the woods and you find a painting hanging on a tree, you look around, there's no footprints, there's no people. What do you conclude? That it grew out of the tree, or that somebody made it and you just can't currently find him? Well, obviously somebody made the painting and you just can't find him right now.
Right.
So whether you can know who God is or which God, is it Allah, Buddha, Jehovah, doesn't matter yet. The big question is there a God? And obviously, yes, there has to be. It's just everything is so complicated. There's no other way to work without a creator.
Right. What are your views on Genesis 6 and the Nephilim?
I have studied that passage till my brain hurts, and I don't have an answer. I sure wish I did. The most commonly accepted theory among Bible scholars and Bible students is that the fallen angels came down and intermarried with the daughters of men and produced some kind of unusual offspring. There were giants in the earth in those days. So I don't know that that's true, but I don't have a better answer for it. Mm-hmm. So I can't help you on that. I wish I did. If you find one, let me know.
Okay. I think a lot of people, like you said, that are theologians, they believe that the giants or Nephilim, were the progeny, the offspring between the forbidden sexual union between human women, plus, the fallen angels, that desired to corrupt the gene pool, basically, and to also, occupy these various areas that the Lord wanted the Hebrews to claim, for themselves and such. So, for example, Goliath, he supposedly was a Nephilim, as a result of, this forbidden union. So that's what a lot of people believe. And okay, and Dr. Hovind, let's see. Somebody said, this dude is amazing. Ask when will his adventure park open again? And will you ever come to Colorado?
Well, as far as Dinosaur Adventureland, we're up there today working. We have about 4 people living on the property now, working like crazy to get everything up and ready. We are no time even to announce. We don't know. I don't think we can open even unless we get a lot more help and money. By the end of the summer, we might be able to do something. But it's just so fun. We had Dinosaur Adventureland here in my backyard. We had 100,000 visitors come from all over the world, 120 countries and all 50 states. So the goal is to use scientific activities, science lessons and things like that to teach a spiritual truth. And the kids go crazy over it. And so somebody donated the money to buy 150 acres of, it's an old gravel pit, 4-wheeler racing place up in Lenox, Alabama, population 100. It is out in the boondocks, and it is just absolutely beautiful. So I can't answer the when. We still waiting on just, we don't go in debt. So if God supplies, we do it. Different people call and say, hey, I love your ministry. I want to give some money to do this. And we have 3 buildings coming in next week that should get us started.
Fantastic. I can't wait until it reopens again. Last question is, this is from somebody who is a scientist, and he asks, what do you think of the duplication of specific exclusive UCE regions in the genome of both members of Aves and Archosauria, such as the crocodilians, which when re-expressed, induced the development of dinosaurian morphology in developing Aves embryos, which then supports the notion that Aves evolved from reptiles? Could you actually answer in a non-scientific way for the average laywoman or layman?
Sure. Aves is simply the birds, aviators. He's saying that there is a lot of genetic information that is similar between birds and crocodiles, and that if you could get this information and get it to reproduce, it would show that they're related somehow. Birds and crocodiles are related. And in the current evolutionary teaching, that is indeed what they teach. Now, I think the whole idea is stupid for multiple reasons. Okay. Microsoft PowerPoint and Microsoft Word have millions of identical lines of code. What does that prove? The same guys designed them. That's what it proves. It doesn't prove they're related. I mean, it doesn't prove they evolved from Morse code. They're designed by the same guys. So if there are similarities in the gene code of the different animals, and there are, that doesn't prove they have a common ancestor. That still could easily prove a common creator. So they're missing the whole point, I think on purpose, but they want so badly for the creation story to not be true. I could point out that the sequence of events necessary to build a Kia and the sequence of events necessary to build a Honda are probably very, very similar. You probably start with the frame and then add the motor and transmission and then add the body and then add the wheels. And, there's probably a series of events to build all cars that is probably similar. Okay. That doesn't prove they all came from bicycles. That proves that's the logical way to design them. And if we have similarities with other animals, that's proof of a common designer. It's the opposite of evolution.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hovind, for appearing on my show, or actually not appearing, but thank you so much, Dr. Hovind, for guest speaking on my show. It's been an awesome honor and a privilege for you to chat with me, and it was very interesting and engaging. And how do people get a hold of you or go to your website?
Right. They can come to our website, drdino.com, DRDINO. That would be great. Or call us at 855-BIG-DINO. I do a YouTube show every day, Kent Hovind Official. They can send in questions to that one. Be glad to discuss them.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hovind, for chatting with me. I appreciate it, and you have a wonderful evening. God bless you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to my interview with Dr. Kent Hovind. It was an honor to interview him. I hope that you listen in a couple weeks from now, Wednesday on June 1st at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It will be my premiere video episode that I will upload onto YouTube. So if you're listening onto one of the podcasting apps out there like Spreaker or iTunes or what have you, please go to youtube.com/Paratruth Radio, and you will hear and see Eric, Justin, and I talk about paranormal pets. It'll be a fun and interesting interview as well. God bless you, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are at in the world. Also, since we've mentioned it a couple times, I thought I'd mention it again. We are open to people that would like to join Paratruth Radio Network. If you're a podcaster or if you want to submit a podcast, please send an email to paratruthradio@gmail.com. Also, if you'd like to be a sponsor or an advertiser, please also email paratruthradio@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Also, if you need prayer, please feel free to email me with comments or questions at ThaiGirlForGod@yahoo.com. Again, that's ThaiGirlForGod@yahoo.com. THAIGIRL, the number 4, GOD@yahoo.com.